were there some things, Bill, that they just wouldn't go along with?
Well, there were some things they didn't know about that we did in the film.
For over 4 decades, Stripes has been celebrated as one of the most quotable, rebellious comedies of its time. But what if we told you there's a hidden truth about the film that even die-hard fans missed? Something Bill Murray himself only recently confirmed? It's not a deleted scene or a behind-the-scenes feud. It's right there in plain sight, woven into the heart of the movie. A detail so subtle, it changed Stripes in ways most never noticed. Once you spot it, you won't see the film the same way again. What did Murray finally reveal? Let's just say it shifts how you see the story. The Cheech and Chong version. When audiences think of Stripes, they picture Bill Murray's irreverent charm and Harold Ramos's dry wit guiding a group of misfits through military life. But what many fans don't realize is that the film was originally imagined as a star vehicle for an entirely different duo, Cheech Marin and Tommy Chong. At the time, Cheech and Chong were at the height of their fame, known for their wildly popular stoner comedies that leaned into countercultural humor, psychedelic escapades, and anarchy wrapped in a cloud of smoke. The initial concept for Stripes wasn't the sharp, sardonic military satire it became. It was designed as a full-blown stoner comedy set against the unlikely backdrop of Army boot camp. The idea was simple and undeniably on-brand for the duo. What would happen if 2 lovable slackers stumbled their way into military service, bringing their spaced-out antics with them? Early drafts of the script allegedly leaned heavily into this angle, featuring surreal sequences including an infamous psychedelic trip in South America. The military plot was primarily a canvas for absurd hijinks, strange encounters, and over-the-top gags that echoed the humor of Up in Smoke and Cheech and Chong's next movie. The film would have fused Cheech and Chong's signature style with an institution, the Army, that represented everything their characters typically mocked. The potential for satire and subversion was enormous. Yet, something went wrong before the partnership could evolve into an outright marriage. An inside rumor says the agent would not pass the script on to his clients, despite filmmakers' excitement. Thus, Cheech and Chong never laid eyes on it, let alone take the roles. Ivan Reitman and others connected with the making explained that the agent was demanding more money or a degree of control that the studio was not willing to concede. There could be only one reason the filmmakers had for this. Cheech and Chong never saw the script at any point for consideration, leaving them free after that to conceive of a completely different cast configuration and tone of the film. The stoner comedy elements were relegated, and the characters were redesigned to express a different sort of rebellious energy. In the opposite sense, the loss of Cheech and Chong also altered Stripes into the one that was shared by audiences. With the departure of the stars, Bill Murray and Harold Ramis took on the lead roles that had their own brand of comedy, less substance-inspired absurdity, and much more sly, anti-authoritarian wit. Traces of the original idea remain, but Stripes has turned more cutting, smarter, and, some say, more timeless. That unexpected casting shift didn't just change the faces on screen, it opened the door for a whole new kind of humor that would reshape the film in ways no one saw coming. When Murray rewrote the comedy. One of the defining qualities of Stripes is its unique comedic tone, a mix of rebellious charm, dry wit, and sly mockery of authority. Much of this can be credited to Bill Murray's improvisational genius. Originally, Stripes started as a looser, more traditional stoner farce, especially given its early ties to Cheech and Chong. But once Murray stepped into the lead role, the film took on a distinctly sharper and more sardonic edge. Murray's natural comedic instincts leaned away from overt stoner slapstick and toward a more nuanced, anti-authoritarian humor. His ad-libs and off-the-cuff remarks reshaped not only his character, but the overall voice of the film, turning it into a comedy that balanced absurdity with a surprising degree of subtlety. Murray's improvisation didn't just generate laughs, it redefined key scenes and altered how other characters interacted. Many moments fans now see as iconic, like his deadpan speeches or flippant responses to military authority figures, weren't originally scripted that way. His natural ability to inject irreverence into even the most mundane lines made his character, John Winger, feel authentic as a reluctant, sardonic everyman caught in a situation he clearly doesn't respect. This looseness on set meant that his co-stars, particularly Harold Ramis, had to adjust in real time, often choosing to underplay their own lines to let Murray's spontaneity shine. The dynamic between the characters shifted because of Murray's improvisation, creating a buddy comedy chemistry that felt more organic than planned. This unique energy, giving rise to the film's disorganized but very much alive tone, is what forms the core of Stripes. Without Murray's off-the-cuff, noisy input, this would have been broader and less layered comedy. Instead, it captured with savvy ridicule of authority and conformity delivered in throwaway jokes, sarcastic asides, and unexpected moments of quiet rebellion. It was wonderful, even for scenes that could otherwise have felt purely silly, with his ability to capture the humor inelegantly. It always could be attitudinal, rather than purely gag. This subtle but vital difference made it stand apart from other military comedies of its time and made it speak to the audience craving something smarter and more subversive. Murray's improvisational style upon Stripes, however, carved much of the comic persona through which he would come to grapple with his task for the rest of his life. Sardonic charm, effortless undermining of authority, balance between detachment and all were collated through this production. It showed that comedy could be loose and intelligent, thus setting up a standard for the later movies and changing how viewers would see him forever. Ramos's subtle comic mastery in Stripes. Much attention is often given to Bill Murray's improvisational brilliance and irreverent humor, but it's Harold Ramis who provided the essential balance that made the film work. Ramos played Russell Ziske, the soft-spoken, brainy schoolteacher who joins the army out of loyalty to his friend rather than any real desire to serve. From his first scene, Ramos brought an understated intelligence and calm that offset Murray's wild, chaotic energy. Where Murray's character thrived on disruption and sardonic wit, Ramos's Ziske countered with reason, empathy, and a quiet resilience. This dynamic created a natural chemistry between the two leads, elevating Stripes from a simple military farce into a layered buddy comedy with heart. Ramos's character served as the emotional grounding point for the group's misadventures. In a film filled with exaggerated personalities and slapstick moments, Ziske was the one who kept the story tethered to something real. His loyalty to Winger, Murray, wasn't born of shared mischief alone. It reflected genuine friendship and a sense of responsibility. Whether he was helping Winger scheme their way through basic training or standing by him during moments of doubt, Ziske represented the moral compass of the film. His steady presence reassured both the characters and the audience, reminding viewers that beneath the chaos was a bond that gave the story emotional weight. He is the best, and all that makes one think when talking about Ramos's performance for mounting scenes without overshadowing flamboyant antics happening around him. He never competed for laughter or tried partying out amongst Murray's improvs. Instead, he matched it. His reactions, often subtle glances, perfectly timed pauses, or one well-placed word, added depth to the humor without reducing it. Instead of trying to steal scenes, he filled them with breathing space for the comedy. Ramos's approach indicated an instinctive grasp of rhythm and tone, giving himself space to be supportive and absolutely necessary in creating the humor of the film. Ramos, in the end, put down the marker of Stripes as a new level for the thoughtful sidekick in buddy comedies. It didn't have to be either foil or straight man writ large, but could achieve complication and emotional resonance. His Ziske changed forever, the audience's expectations of this dynamic rippling through film after film. Without that quiet brilliance of Ramos, the grace, poise, and timeless appeal that Stripes has maintained for decades would not have existed. The lost Eastwood opportunity. After the success of Stripes, Bill Murray found himself at a pivotal point in his career. The film had established him as more than just a sketch comedy star. He was now a bankable leading man with undeniable charm and a talent for blending sarcasm with sincerity. It didn't take long for offers to flood in, including one from none other than Clint Eastwood. According to Murray, Eastwood allegedly approached him with the opportunity to star in what was described as a major Navy-themed action comedy, set against the backdrop of World War II. This wasn't just another light military romp. It was envisioned as a large-scale production, complete with big set pieces, naval battles, and plenty of opportunity for both action and humor. The chance to collaborate with Eastwood, already a Hollywood icon, could have represented a significant turning point in Murray's career trajectory. However, at that moment, Murray was wary of being pigeonholed. Having just come off Stripes, which played heavily on military themes, he feared that taking another uniformed role would cement him as the military comedy guy in the eyes of audiences and studios. For a performer who valued variety and creative freedom, that was a risk he wasn't willing to take. Murray's comedic sensibilities thrived on unpredictability and subverting expectations, and the idea of back-to-back military comedies felt limiting. So, despite the prestige that would have come with working alongside Eastwood and the potential of a high-profile, large-scale production, Murray chose to pass on the offer. At the time, it felt like the right move to avoid being boxed into a single type of role. In recent years, Murray has confessed to this being one of the few career choices of his that he ranks among real regrets. He has done interviews. There are some candid radio and print interviews where he reflects on the possibilities that could have arisen for him had he accepted the offer made by Eastwood. This missed chance was not only the opportunity to star in what might be a highly successful film, but also the opportunity to work with one of the premier figures of the cinema world and the ability to stretch a different part of his talent as an actor. While he is best known for his comedic brilliance, Murray has always gravitated to roles that allow him to reach beyond pure humor. An Eastwood collaboration would have offered a variation on that action-drama-comedy blend that could add yet another hue to an already fully colored career. The Eastwood project was supposed to be something big. The setting would be a massive naval World War II epic, and it will always remain one of those interesting what-ifs in Hollywood history. One can only wonder how different possibly Murray's filmography is, and perhaps the military comedy trajectory would have been had he shown up to the role. Instead, Murray continued his unpredictable path, going toward more offbeat, introspective material. The lost Eastwood collaboration would never become history. Stripes' surprising military support. One of the most surprising aspects of Stripes is the extent to which the U.S. military supported its production. Despite being a comedy that pokes fun at Army life and authority, the film benefited from unprecedented access to real military resources. The U.S. Army provided the production with equipment, vehicles, and even the use of Fort Knox as a primary filming location. This level of cooperation is rare, particularly for a movie that isn't a straightforward patriotic or pro-military project. Yet, the filmmakers were able to use real tanks, helicopters, and training grounds to bring authenticity to the boot camp sequences and action set pieces. The result was a comedy that looked and felt far more genuine than it would have if it had relied solely on studio backlots or fabricated props. What makes this cooperation so remarkable is that military leaders seemed to misunderstand the film's intentions. According to accounts from those involved in the production, the Army believed that Stripes could actually serve as a positive recruitment tool. They saw the movie as a light-hearted take on Army life that, while humorous, still portrayed military service in an appealing way. The satire, irreverence, and subversive jabs at authority figures either went unnoticed or were dismissed as harmless fun. In a sense, the Army underestimated how the film's humor would land with audiences, or perhaps they were simply eager for any pop culture exposure that might attract new recruits during the post-Vietnam era. Fort Knox and real-life soldiers created an unanticipated realism in the most memorable scenes of the film. There was a textural quality to Stripes, from the training montages to the climax of action, that many military comedies lacked. It gave the film such authenticity that those scenes shown with rows of tanks rolling across the landscape or drilling soldiers on real bases stood in magnificent contrast to the absurdities unfolding in the foreground activity. This real-world grounding made the jokes land harder because they were played out in venues that the audience could recognize as genuinely military, as opposed to exaggerated or cartoonish versions of army life. If there's anything that fans, and those who worked on the film, would not miss in hindsight, it would be the irony in Stripes getting so much help from the military it so lovingly mocks. The same institution that becomes the butt of so many of the film's best jokes had a real hand in doing them. Stripes would not have had the same visual impact, much less cultural resonance, without the Army's involvement. It's a curious case of how satire is sometimes given a boost by the very systems it aims to critique. What happened behind the camera, though, was every bit as unpredictable and just as unforgettable. Chaos, camaraderie, and meltdowns. The making of Stripes was as unpredictable and anarchic as the film itself. From the beginning, the production was shaped by constant improvisation and unscripted moments, largely driven by Bill Murray's and Harold Ramos's comedic instincts. The script served more as a loose framework than a rigid guide, and scenes frequently veered off course as actors experimented with lines and actions in real time. This freewheeling style contributed to the film's charm, but also created significant challenges on set. Directors and crew often had to adjust on the fly, resetting cameras, rethinking blocking, and accommodating new gags that appeared spontaneously. What was captured on screen felt natural and effortless, but behind the scenes, it required tremendous patience and flexibility from everyone involved. One of the major difficulties during filming was keeping the cast and crew focused during takes. The sheer volume of unscripted jokes, unexpected facial expressions, and comic timing made it nearly impossible for some scenes to proceed without frequent bursts of laughter. The crew regularly found themselves stifling chuckles behind the camera, and even seasoned actors struggled to stay in character when Murray or Ramos delivered a particularly surprising or well-timed line. Multiple takes were ruined by off-camera giggles, and entire shooting days sometimes ran long because no one could keep a straight face. While these disruptions made production more complicated, they also contributed to the infectious energy that comes through in the finished film. The chaos of the set posed dilemmas to the creative-minded therein, but it also paved the way for discontent among studio executives. Here lie possible reasons for these jitters. From their standpoint, Stripes was a project with many risks. A military comedy that satirizes authority, all the while working in cooperation with the U.S. Army. Studio bosses feared the film's humor would offend the military and any partnership they might have with aiding the production itself or its eventual reception. As scenes became more irreverent and nights of unscripted moments piled up, tensions began to surface between the creative powers and the executive powers that be. Craftsman and diplomat, in equal measures, Reitman deftly steered a path through these potential minefields, trying hard to maintain some degree of harmony among the studio executives and cast members. Amid the stresses and unpredictability rose huge friendships, mighty ones that lasted beyond the production stretches. Long funeral days with laughter over non-stop ideas cemented friendships that endured long after the dust settled. In all, from the delays and frustrations to studio concerns, Stripes became more than a film. It became a testament to the power of its collaboration under Stripes' scenes you never saw. While Stripes became famous for its loose, rebellious comedy, many fans don't realize how different the film might have felt if several significant scenes hadn't been left on the cutting room floor. One of the most notable omissions was a substantial subplot that explored a more serious, emotionally layered romance between Bill Murray's character, John Winger, and Stella, played by P.J. Soles. In the final cut, their relationship feels light and flirtatious, mostly confined to a few memorable comedic moments. But in the original footage, Their bond was given more time to develop, revealing a softer, more vulnerable side of Winger. This romantic arc could have added greater depth to Murray's character, showing that beneath the wisecracks and defiance was someone longing for connection and stability. The movie had some introspective scenes that looked into Winger's disillusionment and ennui with his aimless existence, in addition to the pared-down romance. These quieter moments gave insights into why he joined the army in the first place and how he wrestled with failure and uncertainty. By cutting these sequences, the filmmakers chose to keep the comedic elements and omit character study, which would have slowed the fast pace of the film. While these scenes might have deepened the audience's understanding of Winger's motivations, their deletion kept the snappy rhythm that endeared Stripes to audiences. The most drastic deletion would have to be the psychedelic South America sequence. In what was once an extended detour, the characters found their way into a surreal kind of misadventure in the jungle, with hallucinatory pictures and absurd meetings. The sequence remained from the earliest drafts of the film, which had envisioned Stripes as a stoner comedy for Cheech and Chong. By the time of final cut assembly, it was clear this scene was at odds with the tighter, grounded tone that Murray and director Ivan Reitman had created during production. So, the cut of South America not only streamlined the plot, but also went a long way in establishing Stripes as more than just another counterculture romp. These deletions tilted every scale further toward a rapid and light comedic rhythm that was to win the audience's heart. In doing so, they put Stripes firmly in the context of high-paced humor, far away from introspective surrealism, and hence connected with the maximum number of audience members, consolidating its place as one of the most treasured comedies of the past century. Still, it would be fun to imagine just what Stripes could have looked like in a more complicated, perhaps even stranger, but certainly different manifestation had those deleted sequences remained. Howie's Stripes changed Murray's path. Stripes was a pivotal film in Bill Murray's career, marking the moment when he transitioned from ensemble player to bona fide leading man. Before Stripes, Murray had gained fame on Saturday Night Live and in ensemble-driven comedies like Caddyshack, where his brilliance shone but was shared with other strong personalities. Stripes put Murray at the center of the story, giving him the space to define the film's tone and lead the audience through its narrative. His character, John Winger, was the rebellious heart of the movie, and Murray's performance proved that he had the charisma, timing, and depth to carry a film on his shoulders. This success helped shift perceptions in Hollywood, showing that Murray wasn't just a scene stealer, he could headline a major studio comedy and deliver both laughs and emotional resonance. Stripes would prove commercially and critically successful, giving Bill Murray opportunities to pursue projects that, at least for someone with a sketch comedy background, would be considered more serious or art films. Murray, with some box office power at this time, began to look beyond roles that relied on slapstick or sardonic one-liners. Taking in the confidence Stripes instilled, Murray began to accept roles in more complex, introspective films that married humor with pathos. Directly after Stripes, Murray turned to independent film work such as The Razor's Edge, attempting to pair emotional depth with comic bits. The Razor's Edge was not particularly successful upon release, but the ambition behind that choice was Murray wanting to stretch beyond expectation. Murray's very Schumann-signing percussion work, with regard to character, came together. To John Winger's character, Murray injected a dose of irreverence and anti-authoritarian humor, which are counterbalanced by unanticipated moments of incredible vulnerability. This template was to be followed in several of the later movies, such as Ghostbusters and Scrooged, whereby Murray would take an outwardly cynical role, yet counterpose that with an undercurrent of self-examination and growth. The template was established beautifully in Stripes, where the balancer is an irascible and somewhat complicated menace, gazing around for some deeper meaning in life. Audiences picked up on humor based on an undercurrent that possessed an inner truth, a mark that distinguished Murray from a number of his peers. This is also the point where Stripes put Murray among the very few actors who find themselves well-positioned at the intersection of commercial fare and art house cinema. In short, Stripes had established him as the kind of actor with that brand of commercial appeal to fill seats in big-budget comedies, yet also eminently capable of delivering the more subtle intimations sought by the auteur-minded directors. It was this counterbalance that really became a hallmark of Murray for most of his later career, balancing out the major hits with more character-driven work. Stripes broke comedy traditions. When Stripes hit theaters in 1981, it looked on the surface like another military comedy, an underdog story about misfits stumbling their way through boot camp. But beneath its slapstick and wisecracks, the film quietly defied many of the genre's well-worn tropes. Unlike earlier military comedies that often glorified army life or portrayed recruits as eventual heroes, Stripes centered on a group of reluctant, flawed men who had little interest in discipline or valor. Bill Murray's John Winger wasn't joining the army out of patriotism or duty. He was aimless, broke, and searching for something to shake up his stagnant life. The soldiers around him weren't heroic archetypes either. They were misfits who struggled with authority, flunked drills, and found creative ways to dodge responsibility. This choice set Stripes apart from the usual celebratory or redemptive military narratives. Instead of leaning into macho heroics, the film focused on friendship, loyalty, and the simple goal of surviving boot camp without losing one's sense of self. The characters weren't driven by a desire for medals or glory. They were just trying to make it through the absurdity of army life with their sanity intact and a shared sense of alienation. This emphasis on human connection over traditional military valor helped Stripes resonate with audiences who saw themselves in these flawed, funny men. Another area in which Stripes broke away from the mold was slapstick and smart satire. Most of the military comedies preceding Stripes depended primarily on contrived broad gags or one-dimensional caricatures of drill sergeants and privates. Naturally, Stripes had plenty of pratfalls and the occasional laugh-out-loud moment, but it also had enough dry commentary to layer on bureaucracy, homogeneity, and absurdity of institutional authority around them. The humor wasn't just some pratfalls or a shouting match. It was in the deadpan reactions to the ridiculousness around them. This balancing of silly with sharp was part of what made the film a multi-level experience for audiences wanting belly laughs, along with clever commentary. Stripes also subtly broke the mold of military and buddy comedies. It proved that smart and silly, heartfelt and irreverent, could exist side by side. Its characters weren't just heroes or cowards, they were flawed, funny, and human. This approach challenged future comedies to move beyond rigid genre definitions. It opened the door to a freer, more nuanced kind of humor. That quiet rule-breaking didn't just shape the film, it left a mark on an entire generation of comedies that followed. The legacy fans rarely discuss Stripes is often remembered for its irreverent humor, iconic one-liners, and the charm of its cast. But what many fans rarely discuss is how the film quietly helped establish the buddy comedy blueprint that would dominate the 1980s. Before Stripes, buddy comedies tended to follow more rigid formulas, where one character was the clear comic and the other the obvious straight man. In Stripes, the dynamic between Bill Murray's John Winger and Harold Ramis's Russell Zisky was far more balanced and natural. Both characters contributed to the humor and the emotional center of the story, creating a partnership built on genuine friendship rather than forced contrast. This more authentic buddy dynamic laid the groundwork for future films that followed, from Ghostbusters to Lethal Weapon, where camaraderie and banter were just as important as plot and spectacle. What also set Stripes apart, and influenced countless later comedies, was its unique blend of rebellion and sincerity. The film didn't just mock authority for cheap laughs. It offered a portrayal of characters who resisted conformity while still searching for belonging and meaning. This balance of defiance and heart struck a chord with audiences and filmmakers alike. Later, military comedies like Police Academy and workplace comedies such as Office Space borrowed this tone, showing groups of underdogs navigating systems that tried to crush individuality. Stripes proved that comedy could be subversive and sweet at the same time. and that humor didn't need to sacrifice emotional depth to be effective. Actually, Stripes has a way of causing quite a burst of aspiring directors and writers wanting to mix their satire and sentiment in their own mainstream projects. Just like the success of the film showed audiences clamoring for such types of stories that make fun of institutions, even while giving characters they could really care about. It's a melange between sharp commentary on the military life and the real truth of its misfit heroes that sets the standard for other filmmakers in balancing out the big laughs with the tiny, heartfelt moments. Without Stripes, it's hard to imagine if films like Ferris Bueller's Day Off or Groundhog Day would have pulled off their combination of cheeky irreverence and sincere reflection at all. Overshadowed by flashier comedies of its time, Stripes still made a lasting mark. Its influence lives on in buddy films, ensemble comedies, and workplace satires. More than just quotes and slapstick, it showed comedy could be smart, warm, rebellious, and humane all at once. If this gave you a new way to see Stripes, hit that like button and let us know your thoughts in the comments. What did you never notice until now? Don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories behind your favorite films, and tap the bell so you never miss what's next. And if you're ready for more, click the video on your screen now. Trust us, you won't want to miss it.